An exclusive investigation by this programme has found 1 in 6 parents whose children receive free school meals have gone to bed hungry this summer. Not only that, it's happening on average 3 times a week. Well, in that same survey conducted by Opinion Matters, it also found that half of parents had themselves gone to bed feeling hungry.
Now, the majority say that this year's summer holidays have been more difficult than last year's due to the cost of living. Michelle Morrison went to meet one mum of 2 who's been really struggling to make ends meet.
Hungry in the holidays, mum of 2 Kirsty Lawler has kept video diaries documenting the struggle to feed her children. She's also written down exactly what her and her children have been eating over the last 6 weeks.
Do you see any changes in your eating habits between week 1 and, say, week 5?
So we eat the same food every week, but what I've noticed is less of it now, so we're having to cut back on our portions.
They also show the majority of food she's having to give her children is processed. They have free school meals during term time, so Kirsty was given holiday meal vouchers from her council, but the weekly amount is almost a third less than they were during the last school break in May, leading to heartbreaking consequences.
Truthfully, I do think if I asked my kids, have you gone to bed hungry, I think more than likely they would have told me yeah.
How many times do you think that might have happened? Once?
2 to 3 times a week, I'd say.
And have you had to go to bed feeling hungry?
I'd say about 80% of the time I've been going to bed hungry, and my belly's been rumbling. I've not been able to go to sleep straight away until that hungerness has vanished.
Kirsty's son is also asking questions she's finding almost impossible to answer.
My 5-year-old the other week, he opened the fridge and went, "Mummy, we're poor." In reality, we are, because the money that I get weekly is meant to be for food shopping and bills, and it's not covering either of them anymore.
Well, we're joined now by former government food advisor Henry Dimbleby and Michelle Morrison, who carried out that investigation. Good morning. I mean, Michelle, picking up with you, because it's just heartbreaking, isn't it, hearing Kirsty's story and the fact that she'd had to say to her children, you can't eat everything you want to eat.
Yeah, and I think, we mentioned there that, when we were talking about children going hungry, that was happening on an average of 3 times a week. But if you unpick that, that means that of those people, 1 in 10 were going hungry every single day, going to bed hungry every single day. Can you imagine that? And imagine the physical as well as the psychological impact of that. And Kirsty herself said that, when she goes to bed hungry, she finds it very difficult to sleep. And she told me that it's been really difficult to get her son to go to bed recently. And she thinks that's because he's so hungry, but he doesn't want to tell her because he doesn't want to embarrass her.
It's so difficult, isn't it? And she's saying that she's relying on processed food because of the cost of food. That's obviously cheaper, but it's not a great situation, is it, for the health of her children?
Yeah, and also it's a vicious circle for her, because what she told me was that, yes, she buys processed food because it's cheaper. But if she did, say, one day think, do you know what, I'm going to try something a bit different. I'm going to try and give them something fresh. She can't run the risk of doing that, because if they don't then like it, she doesn't have the luxury of being able to give them something else.
Henry, it's just extraordinary to think, whatever your view out there, nobody wants to see a child go to bed hungry, and that has a long-term impact on kids. You've written about it. Help us understand what that impact is.
So, I'd say, first of all, it's grim, this, but it's not particularly surprising. We've got huge cost of living increases and people's money hasn't increased as much. There was already stress on household budgets. That's increased. The problems are, it's both a kind of acute short-term and a long-term problem. So in the short term, you've got problems with concentration, mental health, not being able to achieve at school or do your holiday work, a resurgence of Victorian diseases, rickets, scurvy. But in the long term, because children are building their vital organs, this actually can have long-term health effects. So bone formation, it can lead to anemia, you've got iron problems, you can have problems with your heart, with your brain function, long-term mental health, and also your body actually reacts to being hungry. So people who go through a period of severe hunger like this are more likely in later life to be higher weight and to have type 2 diabetes, because your body reacts to hunger by saying, right, I never want to be in this situation again, and so it gives you a bigger appetite.
I'd like to say that 1 in 4 teachers are bringing food in for kids in school. A friend that runs a school, Chelsea, said that that's commonplace, right?
And that's in term time,
term
when they
time.
actually have the hot school meals. What happens to those children when they're not at school and those teachers, you know, in the holidays, and those teachers aren't bringing the food in for them?
Can I ask you about, sorry to interrupt, I was just wondering about how it all works, because it seems to be a bit of a postcode lottery. Depending on where you live, these vouchers are more effective than in other parts of the country.
Yeah, so it is a bit of a mess. So the vouchers, first of all, are spread across different parts of government, the Department of Work and Pensions, schools. They give a pot to different councils. Councils sometimes have the money to increase that pot. So it is a bit of a mess. But the fundamental problem for me here is that no one is looking. It's shocking that it takes you to do a survey for us to find this out. There's no data available for the uptake of some of these schemes over the summer, and responsibility is spread across government. So we need someone in government to take control, and government should be producing this data. This is something you can see with your eye. The 10 and 11-year-olds living in poverty are significantly shorter than those who are living in affluent areas. We have the shortest 10 and 11-year-olds of any of the developed countries. So, you know, it's not just one parental responsibility.
Can you help me what that means practically? Because we have to ask questions of politicians where some may argue the blame and certainly the response may lie. What do you mean it's spread across departments?
Well, so we were talking before this. If you ask government what's going on here, the Department for Work and Pensions will say, well, there's this one scheme that's being done in DFE, Department for Education, but there is no government minister who will be able to, who you could ask to come on here and say, why is it that our children are not getting enough food, not only to function now, but that will lead to huge problems in the future for the NHS, for our society more broadly, for the economy. At the moment, diseases of diet are the single biggest thing holding back our GDP. And no one in government feels responsible for that. And that is a huge problem.
So what do you think should be done then? What would you call on the government to do? I mean, is it a case that one person needs to take responsibility? Is it the case that, you know, they need to have a complete overhaul of how this works to support children?
I think there are three things. So the first is these benefits should increase with inflation. They haven't, particularly with food inflation.
13%?
Yeah, and that is why you're seeing more problems than were last year. The second thing is actually it's not just people on free school meals. There's a cohort of people just after free school meals who actually eat even worse sometimes than those on free school meals because they're not eligible. We need to extend free school meals and all the benefits that go with that to everyone on universal credit. 80% of the public believe that that is what we should do. And the third thing is a minister should be, this data should be published, it should be found proactively by government, and one minister should be responsible for sorting this out.
Well, you know, not everybody says that ultimately it's government's problem. They say it starts, begins and ends in families. And I have to say, the overwhelming response so far this morning has been, I'll just give you an example, free school meals during term times, vouchers for school holidays. Some parents need to focus on being parents and putting their kids first. They're lucky to get help. Working parents struggle but get nothing. I think that's partly what you're saying. But some people saying, look, you know, it doesn't matter whether you get a limited income, you can still cook fresh food. That's, I'm afraid to say, what a lot of people around the country will be screaming into their televisions this morning, whether we agree with it or not.
Yeah, but do you know what? If you have a fridge, if you have a freezer, then that's fine. You can do that because you can put that in the fridge. Some people don't have a fridge. Some people don't have a freezer. Kirsty was saying to me that she thinks her fridge is about to give up on her and she doesn't know what she's going to do about that. So, you know, you then do rely on tins of food instead.
And also, I think, you know, we should applaud Kirsty for speaking about this because I know there were a lot of people, weren't there, who wouldn't want to speak about this situation, who, for them, it's a deeply personal thing and they want to hide it from the world rather than actually admit that they're really struggling to feed their family.
And for her, for her, it's a knock-on impact as well into other areas of her life. She's now she's gone into debt over this summer to top up these vouchers to be able to feed her children. I said to her, when are you going to be able to pay that back? And she actually doesn't know. And she said she's cutting back on bills, you know, council tax. She's, you know, not paying gas. She's not paying electricity. You know, so what does she do about that? When is that problem solved? So it has a knock-on impact, a knock-on effect into so many other aspects of her life.
Henry, what were you about?
Yeah, so I was going to say, so first of all, there was an emerging sympathy during COVID for people who were living on benefits, who were trapped in poverty, because we all saw friends of ours who we thought would never be in that situation lose their jobs. That is going, but this is a systemic problem. We have a huge part of our society trapped in poverty. The other thing I would say is just pragmatically, if we don't resolve the problems in our food system, it's going to bring the NHS down and collapse our economy. So as a nation, we will end up both impoverished and sick. And however much you want to blame the parents, as a politician, whoever is in charge in 10 years' time, they're going to be completely handicapped by the problems that the food system is causing us. It needs to become more of a priority.
Have your point of view, half of kids, based on the GMB survey, will go to bed tonight hungry. Something to pause on, isn't it, in 2023, right?
It's, as I said, it's grim, but it is not surprising.
Sadly, isn't it? OK, Henry, Michelle, thank you both very much for that.